Why do housing prices and rent keep going up? Why has buying a house become something only possible if you win a Mr. Beast challenge or become as rich as Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates? And if prices have gone up that much, why hasn't supply kept up? Is it simply because there's no land left in the city to build on? Even with high housing prices, rising living costs, and traffic congestion, why don't people and companies leave those areas? Why do they keep flocking to them instead? Is it, as landlords say, just the market deciding the price? Or is it because of greedy landlords? Speculation? Inflation? Interest rates? Of course, all of these factors do play a role. But surprisingly, the electoral system and agglomeration effects play a huge part in this too. Let's walk through the reasons step by step. First, what is agglomeration effect? Areas where a lot of people live tend to have better infrastructure and can share resources, making life more efficient. Entertainment, transportation, cultural facilities, unique restaurants, big cities are rich in these. But you rarely see them in small towns. The same goes for companies. When companies in the same industry gather in one area, information flows faster and technology evolves more quickly. Related industries, logistics, and talent pools all grow together. The idea that places become better to live in as more people gather ends up drawing even more people to already crowded cities, which increases demand for housing and naturally drives up prices. But that's not the end of it. When more people crowd into a place, traffic jams, pollution, and cost of living also rise. Normally, there's a balance between these benefits and downsides. As demand grows, construction also increases, and at some point, prices should stabilize. But today, we live in a market that's completely out of balance. So now, let's dive into what's really driving up housing prices. The skyrocketing housing prices and rent. This isn't just a natural phenomenon. It's a disaster created by those who stand to gain. But first, let's address a common misunderstanding: the idea that housing prices are rising simply because land is limited. This is half true, half false. Yes, urban land is physically limited. But that doesn't justify current price hikes, because we can increase supply through high-rise buildings and redevelopment. The real problem is bad policy that deliberately restricts supply. In Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, there's a scene where oranges are dumped and sprayed them with kerosene to keep prices up even as people are starving. That's exactly what's happening in today's housing market. In many parts of the U.S., zoning codes limit how land can be used. Especially in areas zoned for single-family homes only, no matter how much demand there is, you can't build apartment complexes or tall buildings to house more people. This stops supply from growing, keeping housing prices high or pushing them even higher. Even while people are paying outrageous rents and becoming homeless, about 3/4 of developable land in Los Angeles is still zoned for single-family homes, and until recently that was true for all of California. Housing prices in Los Angeles rose 280% between 2015 and 2022. While renters and home seekers suffer, landlords have been throwing a party. So let's look at exactly how regulations and wealthy homeowners are driving up prices. First, there's the supply restriction effect we mentioned. It's simple. When you reduce the number of homes that can be built, prices go up. A 1986 study found that housing costs in Davis, California were 9% higher than in comparable areas without owner occupancy requirements and restrictions on new construction. Regulations also make getting building permits harder. Permits are delayed, developers must pay for environmental reviews and infrastructure fees, costs that are passed on to buyers. Restrictions on high-density housing also mean only large, luxury homes get built, leaving a shortage of housing for low to mid-income residents. What's the point of building big houses when people can't even afford a one-bedroom? It only benefits the wealthy and further widens inequality while increasing average housing prices. Of course, not all these regulations exist just to raise prices. Some people genuinely dislike high-density living or fear for public safety and support these regulations. Their preferences aren't wrong, but why should the state institutionalize and protect these preferences? If a group of landlords got together and agreed not to sell homes below a certain price or restricted usage, it would be collusion and legally punishable. But when they elect politicians to pass regulations that achieve the same result, it's somehow allowed. Voluntary collusion can fall apart at any time if someone backs out, but regulations have the power of law to enforce them. In effect, these regulations become the perfect form of collusion, hidden behind a public interest facade but really serving specific interest groups. And government policies that drive up real estate prices don't stop at supply restrictions. Subsidies or mortgage interest rate discounts, these aren't unique to the US, they're happening worldwide. These policies seem helpful for buyers but actually benefit existing homeowners while doing little for new buyers. In heavily regulated areas where it's hard to build, subsidies only drive up prices further, making it even harder to buy a home. This leads to a bizarre situation where government money ends up widening the wealth gap. Governments also tend to send a green light to real estate speculators. To these people, property isn't about living in a home, it's about the steep upward slope of prices. Some people believe prices will rise, and others bet on those people. When even the government is encouraging this, it creates the perfect conditions for a bubble that not only drives prices to absurd levels but also risks collapsing mortgage lenders and even the entire economy. So why do such policies keep getting implemented? First, people often don't realize the impact of these policies. They don't connect things like housing subsidies, mortgage rates, or zoning laws to rising housing prices, so they don't see that only current homeowners benefit. Second, some people do benefit. Homeowners fear falling property values and increased density, so they strongly oppose new development. And politicians are elected by these homeowners. And what do you think those politicians will do once in office? You already know. Policies that push people to buy homes can also turn them into more self-interested homeowners. Studies show areas with higher homeownership tend to have stricter supply regulations, and owning a home can even shift people's political views. The same goes for companies. Firms cluster not just for agglomeration effects but also for political power. When many companies in the same sector are in one place, politicians are more likely to support that sector. Industries concentrated in one region, like manufacturing, receive more subsidies and government benefits than industries spread across the country. This makes companies stick together even when costs rise and leaving becomes difficult. Voting only represents the interests of those who actually vote. When those interests come at a significant cost to society as a whole, the voting system fails to function properly. Under the current system, which elects local representatives, the voices of talented engineers who might move to the area in the future or students who may one day buy a home are not included. This form of voting discourages mobility and worsens intergenerational issues. If we continue using this system, we'll keep getting the same outcomes. I'm not saying the voters themselves are selfish. The problem lies in the structure of the voting system. Because we elect members of parliament, governors, and mayors based on local districts, it's only natural that those who promise to serve local interests get elected. And even presidents are only elected within national borders, which means no one is truly accountable for solving global problems. So, how can we fix these problems? First, we need to eliminate misguided regulations. For regulation only exists to preserve someone's view, maintain neighborhood aesthetics, or keep the community's character, at the cost of making housing unaffordable for everyone else, we need to seriously question its legitimacy. Research suggests that eliminating building restrictions in major cities such as New York, San Francisco, and San Jose could increase U.S. GDP by up to 9.5%. Second, we must change how decisions are made. As long as housing policies are decided solely by current homeowners, things will never improve. The ones benefiting from high home prices are the ones voting and influencing policies, while renters and future residents who suffer the most have little say. We need to build systems that account for long-term and broader impacts beyond the immediate neighborhood. But what truly matters most? It's our ability to recognize which policies are right, and to choose leaders who will fight for the good of society as a whole. If we keep misjudging policies and electing politicians who push harmful agendas, we won't be able to fix the housing crisis or any of the deeper issues we face. Democracy only works well when people think clearly and act with reason. But here's the good news. If each of us makes just a little more effort to understand and engage, we can shape a better, fairer future.